Welcome to the fifth in the Caddie tea break tutorial sessions. This one dealing with object properties and the context sensitive menu, how we can use them to both edit our drawings and manipulate things too, so creating as well as editing. So firstly, how do we call the context sensitive menu and the object properties? Well, as we right click over our screen, we'll notice that the menu that appears has a number of entries on it. Now these entries will change according to whatever selection we have, and this is why it is context sensitive. We'll have our zoom function at the top, we have our snap mode so we can snap to endpoints, intersections and so on. We have a recall last selection, so if we've selected objects, cancelled the selection, go back and recall last selection will allow us to maybe go and just amend things before carrying on with a procedure that we were doing. We have quick select, which we'll look at in a few moments. We have object properties, we have our paste functions from the clipboard, we have our layering functions, 3D views and more. But for a start off, let's just call up the object properties so we can take a quick look at this particular dialog. Object properties is there floating on my screen here, and we'll notice that it is a dialog which you can expand, make different widths and lengths and so on, but it will also dock, so it'll dock at the side of the screen there. We can pull that out if we want to, just with a little grip there. And we can also, if we also have other toolbars, say the quick hatch like we've explored in the first of the tea break tutorials, we can pull that one out, pin it to the side there, and just drop our object properties into the quick hatch there, just moving it up a little further, and what happens is we get a tab at the bottom, and tabs that we can move around so we can have them in the order that we choose. With no object selected, we have none at the top, and that's reflected down on the bottom there. And with this in place, we have the different aspects of the our working space, our working setup, if you like, because here we have the pen colour, which may be more traditionally set from the top for people, or from the pen set for instance, but if we change that there, then that will show the changes in the top toolbar. So we could actually do without that toolbar. We could also do without maybe the scope toolbars, because again we have these accessed from our global object visibility settings down at the bottom. We have our annotation scale, dealt with in a previous tutorial. We have the icon, so if you want to turn the icon off for maybe taking screenshots, maybe that's a good thing to do. We can change whether we see our border, so just taking that away, that which will take away the grid as well. We can choose the settings for our grid, whether we show the border, background colours, whether we're using millimeters or meters for instance. We can also, if we start selecting objects, see more about those objects. So if I pick, in this case, a single individual line and one object selected, we can pick another, we get two lines, we can change the properties of those lines. If I select a third object, I now have multiple. But I can filter down, I can drill down just on the particular types of object that I want. We'll go back to multiple in this case. Maybe change their properties. So this is a dynamic update of the elements within the drawing there, and we can change the layer too. So picking those objects, we can even go to the context sensitive menu in this particular case and turn them into a polyline for instance. Now that's all one object, still with access to control over their things like transparency, whether they're plottable or not, and our layer. So here we have our layering, which we could change, or if we right click there we have the ability to sort by creation, name and index for instance. Going back to our context sensitive menu, if we go to make, we'll see that we can do an offset on that, and we'll do it in that direction. Back on the context sensitive menu, a polyline, we could actually add nodes in, we could even join merge elements into a particular polyline, so we could join that one in, and then going back to the context sensitive menu, you'll see with the object properties, you'll notice that we have yes and no for whether the object is closed. Closing our polyline makes it very easy for things like hatching, as we saw in the quick hatch tutorial. picking our object, we also have then access to things like the move, copy, rotate, or transformation tools. So if we simply move it, we can pick it up and move it from here. But selecting the object again and going for remove, this time holding the control key down, allows me to pick up my objects and then do a dynamic rotate. So as well as being able to move and copy it and do the dynamic rotate and scale, which we can do entering the 0, we can pick our object and scale it up and down dynamically. Going on to other things with polylines, we have the ability to insert nodes, for instance. So just creating different shapes which we could turn into profiles if we're dealing with the AEC, which we'll take a look at a little later on. We have the ability to manipulate the size of our circles, for instance. Literally just taking them as well as updating them from the object properties as well as dynamically on the screen. We have splines, we have offsets for our splines, so we can do that very, very quickly. We also have the ability to edit, and here if we pick our dimension here, we'll see that the object properties is now broken down into lots more sections. Everything from the witness lines to the text colour. So if we pick a different colour, for instance, we could make our text a little larger, so we'll make that 4. So we'll see that that's now changed the size of our dimension. But we notice that we have a style attached to the dimension as too. So we can see that the dimensions here have different styles associated with them. If I pick the second object, we still have the style there as the specific properties, and it says that they vary, but if we change them both to the same, we'll notice that the style is now the same, although the individual properties can be different. Very, very useful if you're taking drawings in from other people and you want to modify those to adhere to your own presentation standards. Things like leader arrows. Here we have the ability to change the pen colours, change the arrowhead size, for instance. We can even change the type from polyline to spline to give us a nice smooth line on our leader. We have text, again fantastic for editing with not only the size, so we can see our height here, so we can change that, so I can make it 150 for instance. We can edit that individually from the right click context sensitive menu. That takes us to the editor. No need to go into the specific tools to find that, where we can add individual changes in the formatting. So we could change that to a different font, for instance. So we've changed that there, make the text larger, maybe even change the colour. So there we can change our text. But if we pick back on the right click menu, see we can remove the format codes, which takes it back to the original text as it was. But text, as I say, is style based too, and we can change the style that we're using for our particular text. So if it varies, we can still select that style. Individual text, we have the option of telling it whether we want a maximum width on the paragraph. So I could say 2 meters, for instance, and we now have that text word wrapped. We could go to things like blocks, and here we have unidirectional scaling. So I could make that slightly narrower or slightly wider. I could even rotate that, so absolutely fantastic if we're trying to just make our site plan drawings a little more individual, for instance. We can, just putting that to 0 there, we can take our blocks and we can edit the attributes. So if we have attributes for, say, tree type, for instance, we could change that to something very, very different. Could be a great way to tag things like trees or whatever it is within your drawing that needs tagging. We have display order. So here we have 3 things that could relate to an elevation. We can take a particular object, in this case a block, and we could use our layering and display. So we could just show that particular object. We could go to make the active layer that layer, or we could manipulate the display order here. So if I say I want to move it in front of a particular object, we'll move it in front of that one, so that car there. So we can vary how our drawings look using the context sensitive menu too, all without having to go to the individual commands. If we've created viewports, so we go to our sheets, for instance, so let's just create a viewport very quickly here. Let's take an area, we'll put it on sheet 1, we'll do it an auto fit. There we go. If we right click over our screen here, we have the sheet options, so we can see we can change the sheet properties, reordering the sheet. There's even ability to show the viewports in the model space. If we right click over the tab, then we have our renaming options, copy, and also the go to, which was added with a recent version of Caddie, just to give us the option of changing between the sheet, especially useful if we have many different sheets associated with a particular drawing, or we can go back to the model space. Just going back to things like a site plan here, I mentioned we come back to the quick select, so right click over our drawing here, we could go to quick select, and here we have the option of selecting objects based on their properties or type. So we could say within a rectangle we want to pick out lines that have, for instance, a particular length, maybe less than 5 meters. Select those, so that will then, within the rectangle I choose, select those objects, which we could then change their colour, maybe change their line style, all dynamically within the drawing. So a very quick way of selecting and editing things. Going on to AEC Objects, here, well, taking just a polyline for a moment, we can make a line, segment and arc just to make it a little bit more individual. So there we are. We can take that, and on the under the AEC tools we can make that into a mass element if we wish, but we could make it into a wall. So we'll make it into a wall here, and we see the arrow there indicating the direction, so that's got a height, it's got a variable width, and we'll just say OK. That gives us our 3D wall. Is it 3D? Yes. Well, if we go to the 3D view, we have our constrained orbit here, so we can just enter on that, and we can see our drawing in 3 dimensions. We can go and add a window in there, so we'll add a window into our wall and just drop our window in there. Now the window is a standard window, and if we just copy that, copied it twice there, so we'll just remove one of those. If we go to our window, so we select that, we can right click and actually change the style of that window. So we could say, for instance, that in terms of design, that's no longer a rectangular window, it's an arched window. So we'll apply that, and we now have an arch on there. And we'll see under the properties we actually have a rise, so if we change that to 225, that will actually change the properties of the window itself. So again, some of the properties related to the style, some not. Going back to the top view, so looking at our window here, we can actually pick our window and move it within the wall if that's what we want to do. So we pick a point and actually move our window within the depth of the wall. Or we could go to the anchor positions here, and if we just type in the distance, that will give us our position there within the wall. We can use polylines to create profiles. So those profiles, we can select our polyline, we can say AEC, make a profile definition, we can give it a name. So if we call this profile 1, it says where's the origin, so we'll pick our origin point there. Do we want any more? polylines? And yes we do, so we'll do that again. So we'll pick the second one. No we don't. We'll see there's an N there, so we'll enter that. So we have our profile, and if we just remove that window for a moment and drop in a door, so a very standard door, and here we see our door. Again, properties that we can change literally on our drawing here. We can right click and edit that door style, so we can go to the design rules, maybe make it into a double door, maybe use the profile that we've just created. So if we come down, there's profile 1, we can apply that, and there we have our door. So a very, very quick way of creating objects and manipulating objects. And in fact, going back to our window here, if we go back to the edit window style, you'll notice there's the quick view down there where we can literally take a look at our window, so a dynamic view of our window which we can move and rotate and view around. And if we were to pick the wall, for instance, so if we pick the wall here and go to the object viewer, you'll notice that here we have the ability in the same way to choose the view that we want, and we can go through even to have a rendered image of that wall as well, and obviously we can attach materials to it. So that's using some of the things there within our object properties and the right click menu. On the subject of stairs here, going to the AEC tools, we can see we can set the global cut plane, so where we're actually viewing our model through horizontally. So if I change that to 2 meters, you see the stair changes. Selecting the stair, we can change the riser count. We could make that something much more normal, for instance, and now we have our stair there reflecting those changes. We can select our stair and we can add railings, for instance. So that adds the railing, and we can choose which side of the stair we want the railing to be on. So very, very quick way of manipulating things. We can go back to our top view. You'll notice here we have door and frame schedules and a window schedule. Let's just look at the window schedule in this particular instance. We'll drop down a couple more windows, so dropping them in very, very quickly. We'll then select our window schedule and then right click, and then we'll add objects to the schedule table. So we'll just drag a box around those objects and we'll see that our window schedule table has updated. And this window schedule, we can update it dynamically, so I've selected yes there, but we could leave it as a fixed thing if we selected no. But back on the subject of the right click context sensitive menu, we can actually do all manner of things with that table, including zooming to particular objects. It will take us directly to a particular object within a drawing. Fantastic if we're trying to identify things within a very complicated and busy drawing. We can take, if we just copy our wall here, so I'll copy our wall here, and at the moment that is just a simple straightforward wall. We have a profile here, or a polyline. If we just make that into a profile, we'll call this sweep, give it an origin there, no additional polylines. We can take our wall and then add a sweep modifier to that wall. So it'd say to that we want to add profile called sweep, and then instantly we have a wall which reflects that shape. We can, if we pick our window here, we'll just draw a polyline in, and I'm just going to choose yellow. Let's make that nice and thick so we can actually see where we're drawing here, and turn the thicknesses on, and we'll just draw a polyline Now change to 3D mode, so we can actually draw in space there. I'll draw my polyline in. Going down to the corner here, I have a profile for a sill. Again, we can make that into a profile that's going to be used this time with the structural member style. So we'll call this sill. OK that, pick our origin point, ask us whether we would like to use it. Yes, we would. So we can employ our sill. In this case, there's a beam, go back to our window and literally just point at our polyline there, and this time I'll turn the thickening off so we can see exactly what we have. We have the sill there on the bottom of our window. Very, very quick, very, very easy. Just exploring a couple more things before we leave this. If we create a roof, so go to our roof tools, so we'll create a roof very quickly. Not going to extend the walls at the moment, we'll just do it as a simple hipped roof. Based upon that polyline, we see we've got our roof created. Fantastically quick for creating massing models and so on. But having got our roof, maybe we want to adjust that and turn the roof into something slightly different, so we can edit that roof. So you see we can turn that hip into a gable, for instance. OK to that. So we now have a gabled roof, and if we want to select the wall, again, right click, context sensitive, again we can trim that wall to the roof. So we just indicate the roof and the wall trims automatically. Going back to our plan, let's just remove the roof for the sake of this demonstration. We can select, let's just remove the polyline there so we can see more clearly. We'll just add in a quick plan modifier, appear, for instance, so we can start drawing from here and turn on our polar snap, our polar tracking, option end, and then we've got appear on our drawing. We could go to our window, and we've looked at object properties, but here we have different aspects of object properties. We have different display representations. So in terms of the sill, for instance, we could choose the sill one, and we could say in terms of the sill B, we don't want to actually see that, so we could change the colour, for instance. So we'll modify all of those windows such that sill B is no longer shown. So very, very quick, very, very easy things to do in your drawings. Immediate access, and of course once you have maybe walls, so if we pick a number of walls there, and we've got our object properties open anyway, we could change the style of those walls to something with a little more interest in them. If we pick on those walls, we'll see that we have additional properties too. So we can get volume, even counting number of bricks and so on, all down to the object properties. So lots of things there to take a look at. Please watch the video again to see how some of these things might be useful to you in terms of your everyday drawing, and please give us any feedback on any aspects of it that you may want more information on. Thank you very much.